Hey everyone, and welcome to part 6 of this Photoshop classroom. So today in my class we learned a little bit more about the pen tool, about a few tools like the patch tool from the healing brush tools, clone stamp tools, how to use the dodge, how to use the burn, and so on and so forth. So we're going to go over these little tools very quickly and straightforward and what they do. So pretty much I have an image here, load it up. I'm going to take my pen tool, which is over here, right here, makes and changes path and shapes with anchor points and handles. So with this tool activated, first things first, you have to check on the top, it's in path or in shape. If it's in shape, you're basically creating a custom shape that you draw out. If it's a path, you're basically doing a selection. Now, the pen tool is very precise when it comes to selection. So here for an example, I'm going to select the entire iPhone. So for straight lines, it's fantastic, it's just normal. You can just click, drag all the way to the end, and just click and select as you go. But when it comes to curves, and I'm going to show you in a little bit how it works. So let's see right here. I have a small little curve. What you can do is, separate from the other selection tools, is that here you can click, hold your left mouse button down, and drag. And it will create that little kind of curvature. And that's really good because we can get really precise here. There we go. Next, you have to understand that the point itself here is called a vector, and everything else you have to precisely indicate where you're going. So if I press Alt on my keyboard, I can move this a little bit closer to ensure that first of all I'm going in this direction. Second, I want this to be parallel to the surface I'm going through. So this is the line I'm going through. And I'm able to continue. If, for an example, you don't, and I click here, it's going to create another curve that is not very specific. So Control Z to go back, and here I can continue. Another curve here, so I can press click here, curve this out. And now look at that example. If I don't fix this point right here, and I click here to continue, it will create that bump. Not what I'm looking for. Alt, click, move it forward, and I can click here and continue the selection. Now, compared to other selection tools, once you're done selecting, typically you can just directly have the selection in front of you. But with the pen tool, it's a bit different. Once you reach the source, you can right click and say make a selection. And now it will ask you for a feather. The feather is basically the amount of pixels you want extra or under from this line. So I'm just going to put 0. And then you have our selection that you can just cut out and do whatever you want with it. Alright, so that's for the pen tool. It's extremely precise compared to other selection tools, and it's very useful. Control D, of course, to deselect. Now, let me open up another image. This is the one we've been using commonly these days. So let's explain a little bit more about the patch tool and the clone stamp tool. So the patch tool, what it does is you select an area, such as the eye, and by clicking and moving this, I'm basically telling the software that this eye I want to replace with this location right here. But it does it in a very intuitive way, in a sense that it understands the colors and all of that, and would put that into perspective. So once it does that, I have everything that I wanted here, over here, but with a little bit of differences. So what do I mean by that? I can take the patch tool all the way to a very blue surface. What it will do is that it will completely create a circle that is very blunt, but with the same colors as the fish instead of the blue. See what I mean? It's trying to understand what the colors are, and it's trying to understand what the information is. So this is very useful for creating and removing certain things, like the eye, for an example, disappears completely. If I want to be a little bit brighter, I can take it to here. There we go. Okay? So that's for the patch tool. Now, the clone stamp tool is a little bit different. What it does is that you can select an area, like so, right here, and I can just paint over it. It will clone this surface into here. But it can be very useful for certain things like copying an eye. So let me scale up my brush, and I can place it wherever I want to. creating multiple eyes. Now, the best thing about this is that you can do it with the healing brush tool, but look at the difference. So over here, I'm going to have one patch tool, one clone stamp tool. Let me just double click it real quick. There we go. And I'm going to take the same exact example over here on the left, healing brush tool. Alt click on the eye and click once, twice. So look at the difference. The healing brush tool creates this little area around it. It doesn't embed itself into the picture or the pixels. While the clone stamp tool actually has a better content awareness, giving you that little effect around it, that it kind of feels like it fits there. It's been there all this time and it fits there. While the other one does not. It has this kind of aura or circle around it, which doesn't really fit with what we're trying to do here. So let's go back. So these are these two tools. The other ones I don't really use. The pattern stamp tool I don't really use that much. Content aware move tool, red eye tool, they're good. I mean, the content aware tool, you can just select an area and just move it, and it will kind of fit itself with the content around it. So it doesn't really help that much. And here over here, basically it removed everything and took the content from around it and fit or replaced that area with whatever we had. Okay? So I don't really like these tools too much. Patch tool, clone stamp tool work perfectly for me. Now something else. The blur tool basically does what it says. It blurs the area. So you can limit the strength on the top here. And it blurs whatever you're painting. Okay? Sharpen does exactly the opposite as a blur. It sharpens the area out. So it sharpens that little area. The teeth maybe a little bit more. There we go. And the smudge tool does exactly what it says. It smudges. So you're able to smudge. Smudge. Okay? Now, dodge tool, burn tool are super important for me. We did learn in the previous session that we use adjustment layers to make things darken or lighten. But for an example, let's bring back something, a small little thing here with some adjustments. I'm gonna redo what I did yesterday on my video. So if you didn't check it out, please, it's gonna be in my channel tutorials. It's part 5. So I'm gonna darken first. So exposure. Darken first. Control I to switch up the mask. Take my brush tool, lower down the opacity to around 10%. Perfect, and paint in white. So I'm just gonna darken a bit of the back of the fish. I want another exposure layer to brighten up certain places. So exposure, brightening it up. Control I, and I'm gonna paint in the front. Just like so. Then I want a little bit more color. Hue saturation. I choose my cyan color. There we go, a bit more saturation. There we go, Control I, and I paint very gently on the face just to get a bit more of that color over where I want it to be. There we go. So now what I want to do is I want to create highlights. And that's the point of the burn and dodge tool. So dodge creates illumination. So if I paint right now, you'll see it just creates a bit more. Oops, sorry, I need to create a new layer. I need to be clicking on the layer itself, sorry. There we go. So it creates this illumination. It's like an exposure brush if you want, but it allows us to create very nice and neat little highlights, like here for an example, maybe around the gums. Okay. So I'm able to create those little highlights, and it's perfect. Now, burn tool does the opposite. It's basically a shadow tool. It allows me to remove light. And it's super important to use these two in sync with adjustment layers. And there we have it. So I just wanted to go over a few very little simple tools that can make your quality of life in Photoshop a little bit easier. And I just wanted to be a very short, straight to the point video today. So if you enjoyed this content, we're almost done with the Photoshop classroom. We're going to be jumping later on to the After Effects classroom, learning how to create animations and effects and motion graphics and stuff like that. So if you really like this content, please wait for that. The extra content is coming soon. And hope you enjoy this. Thank you very much, guys. Goodbye.